All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another session of the DTB KBA Financial Literacy and Enterprise Development Training. We've had 2 sessions so far, and today we are on our 3rd session. Karibuni sana. Please let us know, as always, where you're from and what you've picked up so far. So karibuni sana. This is the 3rd module of the DTB KBA 2024 Financial Literacy session. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We can see you streaming in. Karibuni sana. Thank you for being responsive. We had to adjust our timings a little bit and our dates to Wednesday, and we thank you for the responsiveness and the understanding. So karibuni sana. As always, let us know where you're joining us from. And today we will have a little bit of a twist. Before we begin our session, we'd love to hear from 1 or 2 of you as to how you have implemented, or if you've implemented any changes from the training sessions, whether it's last year or the year before, or even this year. So for example, in the business competitiveness module, were there any principles and concepts that your business is now benefiting from? So we usually request to hear your feedback from the chat, but today we'd like to challenge, have at least 1 or 2 of you share, and we will unmute you so that you can just engage us on any small thing or big thing that you have changed in your business, right from maybe last year or the year before or this year, so that we can just understand what is working, what is not working. So karibuni sana. As always, let us know where you're from and your business and the industry as well. We would be glad to hear from that. Thank you. We have Architect Mutua from Nairobi, Abdallah from Machakos. Karibuni sana. Karibuni sana. And as you join in, please raise your hand up if you are ready to share with us any small or big thing that you have adjusted in your business, maybe from module 1 or from a module in the year before. It also helps to inspire other participants to know how to bring these concepts home and how to implement. So we will be looking out to see who would be willing to share on the same. We have Umar in the horticulture space from Nairobi. We have Nicholas from Nairobi. Karibuni sana. Karibuni sana. We have Brendin from Barcelona. Wow. Wow, this is amazing. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So today's session is on legal requirements in business. It's going to be quite an intense session, so get ready, have your glass of water on the side so that you can be ready to delve into it. Yeah, so karibuni sana, karibuni sana. So I don't want to close anyone out. I don't know if there's anyone who would want to share any concepts that they have gained so far from the sessions. And this time we would allow you to speak. So feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to let us know. And then we also have sign language interpretation. And we will be also directing the same on chat, but there is an interpretation tab at the bottom of your screen where we have Victor as well as Abigail, who are helping us with the interpretation. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We'll give just a few more minutes for more people to join as we begin. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right. And so today's session is on legal requirements in business, and we will have, we have Kimani. So let me just allow Kimani to talk, and then we can begin. So karibu sana Kimani. Kimani, now you can unmute. All right, I think we have maybe a small challenge with audio. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Karibu Kimani. Yes.
Awesome. So good morning, everyone. My name is Kimani Kahio. I represent a company called Taroska Executives, in which we are an executive car rental company. We offer services to events, that is social events and corporate events. We also do offer chopper charters and armored vehicles and close protection officers. So for me, I would say one of the biggest benefits I have from the previous modules is the idea of being online, having an online presence. So we've been able to create a website in which also we've been able to do our SEO, which we are actually right now doing as we step up at a time. Something else is about financial management, which I really learned a lot. So thank you very much, DTB, for these trainings. Nashukuru sana.
Thank you, Kimani, and it is inspiring to hear the changes that you have made, the website. All the best as you continue to seek to improve your business. So just confirm that you can hear me well. We can confirm chats. Okay, great. So we'll begin. So today's session, like we've said, is on legal requirements in business. And we have Mr. Ojuku, who will be taking us through the session. He is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and he has experience of 20 years of experience in the legal space. He's also had teaching experience in the university, and he is equipped with various skills. And so today we will have an in-depth session just to understand the legal requirements in the Kenyan space. So karibuni sana. I will allow him to just say hi as we share also the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, good morning to you. Welcome to the presentation. I hope you will enjoy the session.
So we're just going to share the screen and you'll let us know if you're able to see. Last week we had some challenges around the screen sharing and the boxes. So we've tried to sort that out today, and we will just need your confirmation that this works. So we request for just a few more minutes as we set this up, and we will begin in a few. Thank you very much. So please confirm.
Hello. That she will be coming back. Again, thank you guys for sharing. Thank you, Kimani, for sharing your experience with your business. I see a few more hands up as we wait for our trainer for today as they finish setting up. So Wambugu, I'm gonna unmute you. We're very happy to listen to how uniquely you are trying to improve your business. So please proceed. Wambugu, Kemoche. Wambugu, okay. As you wait for Wambugu, I'm also gonna unmute Kishore Shah. Are you there? Kishore Shah, if you're there, please do note that I have, you can unmute and actually share your experience as well. Okay, that's fine. We'll wait for either Wambugu or Kishore to engage when they're ready to. In the meantime, what we'd really like to say is we're very happy that some people are actually finding the ability to implement 1, 2, 3 things here and there from these trainings. What we're hoping is as you proceed, you'll be taking in 1 or 2 action points, and that will be helpful for your business. I think for some of us, the motivation also is that we can't just continue going through these trainings without really trying also to put them into action. So while we might be employees, some of us will be reaching out to you people to ask, hey, how are you doing this business? Are we able to learn from you something a little bit, even as we also try to set up some things. So I'm going to share the presentation so that we can allow the presenter to begin the session. Please do confirm that you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Is my screen visible? Yeah, I see the thumbs up. Yes, thank you very much. Our trainer today is Mr. Ronald. Yes. As mentioned to you earlier, and I'm gonna allow him to now take over.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you have been informed, my role is quite simple, and that is to give an overview of the legal regime that governs businesses in Kenya. And I believe at the end of the day, you will get 1 or 2 things with respect to the way in which one is expected to run his business in Kenya from the legal perspective. So we have a very rich resource of law that deals with matters business, but you'll find that it cuts across very many legislations. But even before we come to legislations, you'll find that the Constitution of Kenya underpins most of the requirements with respect to the rights of persons, and this is contained. This is contained in basically in the Bill of Rights, apart from other provisions that cut across the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Now, you will notice, especially for those of you who are already in business, that you are required to comply with certain legal requirements before you could set up a business, whether that business is a company, a partnership, or a sole proprietorship. Now, the simplest form of business that you can form in Kenya is what we call the sole proprietorship, which is basically a family business run by one person, although that person may be assisted by members of his family. But as far as decisions are concerned, the main decision maker is the proprietor. The others, family members merely play a supportive role, and they have no part in the decision making. So the requirement for formation of the business called a company are provided in an act of parliament that we call the Companies Act 2015, which is an amendment to the earlier law, which was Cap 489, which has now basically been replaced by the Companies Act 2015 by way of amendment. Now, when we come to companies, which is the most, I can say the most complicated form of business organization, there are a number of types of companies. The first one is a company limited by shares, a company limited by guarantee, and you might also have an unlimited company, although the company law policy frowns upon having members of a company have unlimited liability, because the whole purpose of formation of a company is basically to enhance the protection given to the shareholders so that their whole fortune is not at stake, so that if the business is struggling, the business is owing, shareholders or directors will not be called upon to answer for the indebtedness of the company. Further division of a company is into a public limited company and a private limited company. The main distinction between these two forms of companies is that a public limited liability is limited in its membership, and shareholding is open to all who are willing. Whereas a private company is basically an advanced partnership, whose membership is usually restricted to those that the directors approve of, so that if the directors don't approve of a person becoming a shareholder, then that person cannot become a member. Now, the registration process for the two types of companies, whether it is a public company or a private company, whether the same is limited by shares or limited by guarantee, the registration process is the same, although the cost varies, because the cost is basically determined by the declared number of shares that will be available for allocation or for distribution. Now, you may also have a branch of a foreign company being registered. The only limitation to that is that that foreign company must have a local representative, at least one local representative. And that local representative is the one who would be directly responsible to answer inquiries that may arise from regulators. You remember that the path of a company starts at the issue of the certificate of incorporation, although in the case of a foreign company, you do not need a certificate of incorporation. What is required is compliance certificates, a certificate of compliance, which is issued by the Register of Societies, so that the Register of Companies, once all the requirements have been met. Now, the second type of business I've said is a business name, which is basically usually a sole proprietor. This is suitable for small businesses which do not foresee a large number of membership. And it is usually a business structure for small and medium-sized enterprises. So what one needs to do is go to the business registration services. Business registration services, which is housed at community, and comply with the requirements. And then you get your business name. Now, unlike a company which must have a unique name, a sole proprietorship can have this as the owners or a combination of names, and there is no restriction unless it's one that is based on public policy. Now, in order to share the fortunes of a business and the costs and the risks, the second type of business or third type of business that may be registered is a partnership. Now, a partnership is basically one that is comprised of at least two members. At least two members must be partners, and a maximum of 20, so that if the number exceeds 20, then it ceases being a partnership. It will be treated as a company. Now, the main risk with a partnership is that all fortune of the partners is at risk, which means that creditors can come and take the personal fortunes of the partners if the assets of the company, as at the time they are coming to claim, are not sufficient. And that's unlike in the case of a company, which if the liability is limited, then the only thing that you can go for if you are a creditor are the assets of the company, because as by law, a company and its members are not the same person. Once a company is registered, it becomes an entity with its own identity. It's a legal person. It answers for its own debts. And the advantage it has is that it has what we call perpetual succession, which means that once a company has been incorporated, it never dies. It will only die through a process. And that process is what is referred to as liquidation. Whereas in the case of partnerships, usually the death of a partner, unless the partnership deed provides otherwise, then the law provides that once a partner dies, just like in the case of a sole proprietorship, then that dissolves the business. Now we have referred to partners. Perhaps I need to refer to what we call a limited liability partnership. A limited liability partnership, unlike a general partnership, a general partnership is usually that which has no liability. The partners have no limitation in liability, whereas a limited liability partnership is one which, like a company, will allow the partners not to be liable for the debts of the partnership, provided it was conducted in the course of the partnership business. So that in case of a limited liability partnership, then the liability will be according to whatever agreements that the parties have entered into. So that this type of partnership has the characteristics of both a company and a partnership, which means that it has a benefit over a general partnership. Once it's registered, as per the provisions of law, it gains a corporate legal entity different from its members. It is able to own its own property in its own name. And from a tax perspective, partnership income is taxed in the hands of each partner. Depending on the type of business, there may be a requirement that you take out a business permit. You take out a business permit, and this enables you to carry on business. And this is usually the responsibility of the county governments, because as you know, in Kenya, we have a dual type of governments. We have a government at the national level and a government at the county level. We call it devolved system of government. It is usually the county governments which will issue permits. For example, in Nairobi County, you have the single business permit, which is issued by the county government of Nairobi. Now, once you have made a decision on the type of business that you want to run, you will need a license. And additionally, it is a requirement. It's a requirement that among the things that you need to take out to ensure that you take out things you take out are insurance for the employees. You need to take insurance from employees. Formerly, it used to be called NHIF. Now it's called SHIF. And then you also need to take responsibility with the National Social Security Fund, NSSF. And these two require that you make a monthly contribution to these two bodies so that the workers, the employees, get a benefit. Besides that, you need to ensure that apart from taking out the necessary permits and licenses, you also must need to comply with the taxation regulations. Remember that there are a number of taxes that one, whether an individual or a body corporate, will need to pay, and that requires registration with the National Tax Collection Body, that's the Kenya Revenue Authority. And once you have registered with that body, then you also ensure that you comply with the taxation regulations. That means returns, regular returns as required, so that you do not fall off the law. Now, if you have employees, then it is important that you follow the labor law you must carrying out food production. Okay, if you are a hotel, then you must ensure that you comply with the various regulations with respect to health. There are also intellectual property laws that protect you and other business intangible assets. These include patents, trademarks, and copyrights. Remember that once you have established a brand, it is important that you don't lose that brand to your competitors, because if, say, for example, you have discovered a unique product, then it's important that you patent it, because if you do not, then competitors will take over. The same as with trademarks and copyrights. Copyrights is especially important for those that are involved in the music industry, for example, so that you prevent persons from benefiting from your songs or whatever you have invented, and that obviously will be prejudicial to your business. And I also needed to say that Kenya you to break down the various legal requirements. Now, in case you start the process, we call it incorporation, which involves several steps, including search and reserving a business name. Now, the first process is that once you have conceived of the name that you want to trade by, then you need to apply through the government's eCitizen website to find out whether that name is available for registration. And this is to prevent a situation where you have various businesses sharing the same name, because that will mean that customers will not be able to differentiate between one company and another company. So first of all, you decide on what name you want to trade by. You send a search to the registrar, and that search reserves it for about 28 days, which will enable you to complete the registration process. And then you need to know that if you are not able to complete within that prescribed time, then you are allowed to seek for an extension, a further extension, to enable you complete the registration process. Now, the purpose of that research, as I've said, is to ensure that existing companies, for example, do not lose business to newcomers, okay? So that the name is unique. The name must be one that is unique. It must not be too similar to an already existing name. It must show a certain distinct difference so that you do not confuse customers, because customers are also not readily available. Once you have them, you need to keep them. Once you have them, you need to keep them. So after reserving your business name, you are required to submit your documents to the Register of Companies. And the documents that must be submitted are: one, you need a business name reservation certificate. Then you need memorandum and articles of association. This is particularly in case of companies And you also need a statement of the nominal capital, apart from the names of the first directors and the company secretary, if it is if your company is a public company, or it's a large private company, then you need to have a company secretary. Now, once the registration is complete, in case of a company, you will receive what we call an incorporation certificate, and that's your birth certificate. And your business starts. Your business starts working from the date of the issue of the birth certificate, because before that, you do not exist. You are just like, especially during the promotion process, you are like a child who is in the womb of the mother, okay? A child who is not been born. And we do not know ultimately whether the child will be born alive or there will be a stillbirth. So the issue of the certificate of incorporation gives you the license to start trading immediately. But of course, you will note that sole proprietorships, usually the typical sole proprietorships, do not require registration. You don't need to register anything. General partnerships also do not require necessary registration, because as they are a result of a contract, sometimes they can be oral. You can create a partnership orally, so you can't register an oral thing. All that can be registered is something that is in writing. But for companies, there must be registration. You can't start trading unless you are registered. In other words, unless you are incorporated. Now, it's important to understand that the main purpose sometimes of regulation of businesses is so as to ensure that they become liable for tax. Yeah? Because it said that in this world, death and taxes are a certainty. You must pay taxes and you must someday die. And it's for this reason that there is a strict legal regime of regulation of companies to ensure that they comply with the tax requirements, because taxes are really the source, and really the main source through which government raises revenue, which then it uses to carry out development programs, pay salaries, and so on. Now, the tax system in Kenya is administered by the Kenya Revenue Authority, and it includes various types of businesses. Sorry, various types of taxes, pardon. So the various types of taxes include taxes such as corporate tax. And it's a tax which is based on the profits that a business makes. And it is levied at the rate of 30% for resident companies and 37.5% for non-resident companies. Resident companies are those that are registered and incorporated in Kenya and carry on businesses here. Non-resident companies are, in other words, foreign companies. That is, companies that are incorporated elsewhere. A company may be incorporated in Uganda and is as a branch in Kenya, or in Tanzania, and as a branch in Kenya, because as a liberalized economy and in this era, you cannot stop people from coming to carry on business in your country. Now, how is corporate tax calculated? It is said to be a complex process involving multiple factors, including the company structure, activities, and profits, so that there is no uniformity in the calculation of this type of tax. As I've said, it includes the company structure, meaning how is the company structured? How is the governing structure. Then what activities does it carry out? Okay. A catering company will be taxed differently from a betting company. Okay. It's because of the activities that they carry out. And then profits. Profits are not guaranteed. Profits vary from year to year. And it's for this reason, you'll find that your liability for tax this year will be different from your tax last year. Because if you made more profit last year, you could have been assessed at a higher percentage, whereas if you made less profits, or in fact, if you made no profits, you may have made negative profits, then your liability for the tax will be quite low. And we are saying an example is that if a company shows that their profits were invested in the business, then in that case, their liability for tax will be lower. It's different where you have paid dividends, because companies exist for purposes of shareholders investing and getting returns by way of dividends at the end of the year or mid-year, as the company has agreed. So if the tax regulator finds that you are paying all your profits to shareholders as dividends, then you may be liable to a higher rate of tax. As a company, you may also claim deductions for employee benefits and training. So if you invest in the training of your employees, or you give them certain benefits, then that becomes an avenue. That becomes another avenue for differentiation in tax from year to year. Then you now have the value added tax. What is the value added tax? According to the Stamp Duty Act, VAT is a tax on the supply of goods and services. Okay, it's charged. Usually it's transferred to the customers, or because companies then will add this amount, will load it to the customers, and as per the current law, it's levied at 16% per annum, and then the tax is charged wherever value is added to a product or service. With those that collect it acting as an agent as of government, and I think these are what you call withholding tax agents. So they hold it and then surrender it to the government as agents. Then you have pay as you earn. This is a tax levied on employment income, so that it's deducted from the employee's salary at source, and the employer is responsible for deducting the payee from employee salary each month and remitting it to the government. And this type of tax depends on the employee's salary level, and it is graduated. Okay, that means that the more you earn, then the more you will be liable to pay. And this one, unlike the previous one, the corporate tax is fairly straightforward, and the employer handles all the calculations and payments, so that if it is whatever it is, 20%, 30%, which is then 35%, that is charged on an individual employee's salary. Then we now have excise duty. What is excise duty? It's a special tax which is charged on importing and manufacturing certain consumable goods. So that's why you find that there are certain products which are exempt from excise duty. It's an indirect tax on all goods that are consumed in the country, regardless of whether they are imported or manufactured locally. In Kenya, the duty is imposed on items such as cigarettes, which is called a sin, is it a sin product? Cigarettes, alcohol, petroleum products, beverages, and pharmaceuticals. And the government determines the rate of excise duty, which is to be charged on these goods, and it varies from item to time, and it's usually contained in the budget proposals that are made by governments each year. Then we have the capital gains tax. What is capital gains? Capital gains is levied from gains made on the transfer of property situated in Kenya, whether or not the property was acquired before 1st January. This should be 1st January 2015, before 1st January 2015, because that is when, after a lull of 30 years, the Uhuru government reintroduced the corporates, so that the capital gains tax, at the time it was introduced, it was 5%, but by an amendment to the law, effective 1st January 2023, it was raised to 15%. This is said to be a final tax, meaning that it's not subject to further taxation, that once you have paid the 15%, then you are not liable for further taxations. Now, importance of registering for tax purposes. We say that after registering for services, that is after incorporation, after organization, all businesses must file their returns on taxes within the given timelines. Missing the deadline for filing taxes can lead to heavy penalties, fines, and possible legal action. Therefore, it's important for business organizations to be aware of the deadlines that have been set, and these deadlines are not set by the businesses, but they are set by the government, which then means that businesses will need to comply with those timelines so that they ensure that they remain in good books with the government, which is the main regulator. Because as I've said, if you do not comply, then you may be liable to penalties, okay? Like we are told that if you do not file your individual returns within a certain timeline, then you'll be liable to pay 20,000 Kenya shillings. You may be fined, and there's a possibility of legal action. Legal action must be frowned upon because it's usually expensive. It exposes you to notoriety. It exposes you to your competitors coming to know that you do not pay taxes, and therefore you are not law abiding. So that you need to have the right accounting system. You need to have the right accounting system so that you are aware of these timelines, and you then need to ensure that you employ good accountants who enable your business to keep track of your income and expenses, which is essential for filing these tax returns and paying them. So for VAT and payee, the payment is monthly, while corporate tax is paid annually. Failure to comply will lead to penalties and interest charges. If you don't pay tax on time and in full, you can actually be held liable for criminal charges or fraud or tax evasion. These are fairly serious charges. These are fairly serious charges. And if you are director of a company, for example, or if you are a partner in a partnership of whichever kind, and it is established, the taxman establishes that you have been fraudulent in your returns, or that you have evaded tax, not avoided, but evaded tax, then you might be liable to criminal charges. And if convicted, if you are director, for example, then you might be barred from holding that position for a period of time. Or if the amount involved is fairly large, you may even be barred for life from holding a directorship of any company in the future. Now, sometimes for purposes of giving incentives for business, that means that you encourage investors to come to Kenya and invest. The government of Kenya may offer several tax incentives to encourage investment and growth. These incentives include investment deductions. These deductions are assigned as incentives to attract investment into Kenya's economy. This can reduce the cost of capital or increase expenditure on things such as research and development. This helps to spur growth, create jobs, and increase overall economic productivity. So we're saying that companies or businesses are encouraged to invest in research and development, because by proper research and the development, then you are able to increase the capacity. You're able to increase your capacity as a company. You're able to increase the capacity of the workers so that they become more innovative. And by becoming more innovative, then there is power growth, creates more jobs in the market, and then the overall economic productivity is also increased. Then we have the export processing zone, tax incentive, CPZ. These zones are given certain incentives, including but not limited to a 10-year tax holiday. So that for 10 years, they're not liable for certain taxes. They're able to import duty-free goods and export raw materials. These incentives allow business to reduce their costs, making them more competitive in the global market. And EBZs also offer investors an easier process for setting up businesses due to a special one-stop shop for processing permits and licenses. And this, of course, those of you who are aware of the EBZs in the Machakos area and other parts of Nairobi, you will be able to be aware of the possibility or the availability of this economic zone. Then we have special economic zone tax incentives called special economic zones, which offer various tax incentives such as reduced corporate taxes and custom duty that makes it easier for businesses to establish their operations in Kenya. This, as you can see, is merely geared towards foreign investors. These tax incentives help to attract investments. They create jobs, promote economic growth, while helping to create an environment that encourages innovation and competitiveness. Now you are a businessman who employs. Get labor. Okay, so you need to employ. And one of the things that employment laws. In fact, the Constitution of Kenya under Article 41 makes special mention of employees' rights, and they say it includes getting fair remuneration for their work, it includes right to join a trade union and the right. So entrepreneurs need to understand these laws. We say that Article 41 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 underpins what we call protection of employees from unfair labor practices, as is contained in the ILO conventions, the International Labor Organization conventions on the rights of workers. Now, if you are unaware of these rights that are given to employees under Article 41 of the Constitution and the Employment Act of 2007, then you are likely to run into legal issues, legal perils, which again will become expensive and expose you to prosecution, expose you to legal suits, which ultimately become expensive. So it's therefore important that we familiarize ourselves, particularly with the Employment Act 2007, which consolidated all the various laws that related to workers in Kenya, including the Trade Union Act, the Factories Act, the Workmen Compensation Act, okay, consolidated these laws to one, the Employment Act 2007, so that it's easy at just a glance to have all the requirements of the Employment Act of 2007. It also contains a minimum wage requirement that workers are entitled to a minimum wage. In developing countries, it's referred to as a living wage. Okay? As a living wage, which means that a workman at the end of the month, okay, must have a wage that, apart from providing him the basic necessities, decent house, food of the good quality, the ability to pay his monthly expenses, it's also a requirement that he needs something for him to treat himself.
Hello, just a moment. We are sorting the audio. Sorting the audio in a minute. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. We are sorting the audio issue. That's good.
So minimum wage requirements, and you notice from the slide that the prescribed minimum wage for employees in Nairobi is Kenya shillings 15,120. Now, it basically means that if you're employing security guards, the minimum you must pay them is 15,120 shillings. And as I've said, the minimum wage does not mean that that is the one that you must pay. It means that it is the minimum that you can pay. You can go up, okay? You can go up to any level, but then this is a baseline for what employees need to pay their workers, which then provide them with some assurance of payment for the work done. Now you can choose the mode of payment. You can choose various ways of paying your employees, which can be via credit, M-Pesa, and so on, but you are discouraged from paying in a drinking place. Working hours and overtime regulations, it is provided that an employee should work for a maximum of 6 days a week, so that he requires, okay, he requires a rest day. Because remember that the Constitution of Kenya provides that no one should be kept in servitude. No one should be kept in slavery. Okay, you should not keep an employee like you are keeping a slave. They must be treated with dignity that they deserve. Otherwise, you run the risk of running foul of the law. Now, any work that is beyond the maximum working hours is considered as overtime and should be compensated at 1.5 times the normal hourly rate. And as I've said, the law requires that employees get a day off every week, at least once every week, with at least 24 consecutive hours of duty. The work week should also be regulated to ensure that employees work a maximum of 6 consecutive days. Employers must ensure that employees have sufficient rest periods during the day, with a break of at least 30 minutes. This, I believe, is for purposes of the lunch break. And of course, what has been left unmentioned is the rights of women at the workplace, which include, but they are not limited to, paid maternity and paid maternity leave. And where they have young children, very young children, where they have just given birth, then they need to be given time off to go and nurse their children. And employers are encouraged to keep what we call creches, so that young mothers can come with their little children and nurse them at the workplace. And that's why we say that they need a break. They need to be given a break. And the purpose of this break is for these mothers to nurse their children while they are at work. And it may also be necessary that you reduce, when they are really fairly young, you reduce their working hours for a period as they continue to nurse their children. The other requirement, which is provided by the employment law, is health and safety regulations, which then obliges employers to ensure that their employees' health and safety while at work is maintained. So there must be a safe working environment, protective equipment, and a training on handling hazardous materials, so that employers must ensure that their employees are not exposed to health hazards while at work. We also need to add that employers must ensure that there is safe drinking water. Okay? There is an obligation for employers to provide water that is fit for human consumption. Now, you may have noticed that recently there was a move by certain leading companies in Kenya to reduce water stations in their workplaces that I think amounts to a violation of employees' rights. So if there is an accident at the workplace or injuries, it must be reported to the relevant authorities. And they must also then make sure that they monitor employees for any signs of mental or physical fatigue and ensure regular breaks throughout the workday. Now we ask ourselves, one of the challenges you may be facing, or you are likely to face, is that maybe you have an employee who is an alcoholic, or who is on drugs. Do you terminate that employee, or what do you do? You have a duty to ensure that they are taken care of. If possible, take them to centers where they can rehabilitate, because these are actually illnesses. They are now become diseases. Do you send a sick person away? So you need to be compassionate and you need to show empathy by helping them to come back to their feet. So your legal obligations to start your business on the right foot is number one, you comply with the legal requirements for entrepreneurs starting a business, understand and adhere to business registration requirement, taxation, employment and labor, and intellectual property laws to ensure the success of the business and avoid legal disputes. Seek professional advice and guidance which can provide valuable information on the legal framework and requirements necessary for starting and operating a business in Kenya. And by complying with regulations and the law, entrepreneurs can build a strong foundation for their businesses and contribute to the growth and development of the Kenyan economy. Many businesses, big and small, have collapsed for their failure to operate within the confines of the law. The government is a key shareholder in business operations as it forms the backbone of an economy. So the government will be alive to the operations. The government will be alive to the operation of businesses. And if they find that you are in violation, then you run the risk of being closed. So in registering, you need to file some documents to the Registry of Companies, which include the name, reservation certificate, statement of nominal capital, memorandum, and articles of association. So at this point, I request that we take a short break, and we come back after 15 minutes. We resume after 15 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I think very importantly, we appreciate the depth of this presentation, and we want you to know that we've noted very many questions that have come in. that are pending answers. And I know that as we continue with the presentation, you're having way more questions. So what we'll do after the break is we will begin by having the speaker address some of your questions to the extent that we can before he then completes the rest of the presentation. We've noted that the questions are really piling up, and it is good that we address them in real time. So after the break, that's what we'll start with. See you in 15 minutes at just shortly before 10:30. Thank you very much. If you have any more questions, please post them. We'll put them together right after the break for them to be addressed. Asanteni sana. So please do visit the website, but in the meantime, just try and download immediately. For example, just know that by tomorrow we will have sent today's session together with a reminder for last week's session. Then the faster you download it, the better. Thank you, and welcome back. Now, you've been asking a lot of questions, a lot of them, and what we're going to do is we're going to sample a few of them, and then at the end of the session again we'll have another Q&A. But let's begin with our friend Edwin. And Edwin, thank you for being very active. Edwin had asked a question regarding NSSF and NHIF. And his question is very important because he just and he was asking us to reiterate the need for business to register for NSSF and NHIF, especially in a case where it is a new LLC. Reiterate the need to register for NSSF and NHIF in case where it is a new LLC. And I think as you do that, Mr. Ronald, what you can do for us also is just try and unpack for us this new NHIF, now called SHIF or SHA, and what it would take for businesses to migrate their employees from the previous NHIF to NSSF to SHIF. Is it an automatic process, or what happens? And if you are able to as well, especially if you know the amounts involved, calculations involved, you could expand for us that as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. A question has been asked. Number one, I'll start with the need to register employees with these two bodies. Now, with NSSF, you are assisting your employers to have a comfortable retirement. And the government has put it there as a social security mechanism. It's basically a social security mechanism, which then requires that contributions are made by employers. And because employees do not all retire at the same time, the money gets into a pool. So those who exit are entitled to what we call superannuation. That is an amount paid after someone leaves employment. It is the same thing as asking, when you ask for the reason why these two bodies must be registered with, it is the same thing as asking, why is it that the government forbids stealing? Why is it that stealing is an offense, a criminal offense? Or why is it that overspeeding on our public highways is an offense? Law, you need to understand, serves quite a bit of social, it's more or less like socialism, in the sense that persons contribute collectively, persons contribute to each other's safety.
If you are left to drive as you wish, then you put the life of others at risk. But if you are controlled and you are punished if you do not comply, then it acts as a disincentive for others to break the speed limit. With respect to the National Hospital Insurance Fund, which is now SHIF or something like that, it is the same concept, okay? That you are, because medical care is expensive, okay? And because not all persons become sick at the same time, then you are also required to contribute to a social pool to ensure that those who fall sick, the few or more men who get sick, are able to get medical care from this pool. And I think its main reason for existence, again, is that the government, as it is unable to provide sufficient medical care for its citizens, so that even if the Constitution gives a dictate that a citizen is entitled to health care, because of our relative low economic status, the government is not able to, the government is not able to pay. And then you also find that private insurance companies are expensive. Okay, so this one is brought as an alternative, which is relatively cheaper. And with respect to the SHIF, remember that it is still controversial. The migration itself is automatic. If you are registered on NHIF, you'll be transmitted automatically to. You will get a text on your phone that you have been transferred, but then you need to comply with certain further registration requirements, because in the meantime you may have added children, you may have added wives, you may have changed your name. Okay, so you still need to visit the website and provide for those new requirements. As for the rates, we are still, the jury is still out. I'm sure very soon it will settle, then we'll be able to know. But the general feeling is that it's more expensive than the former one. Thank you.
And just a follow-up question on that. If an employer does not remit this NSSF and NHIF, are there certain penalties that they may suffer down the line? And also, it is noted that NSSF and NHIF also, though not mandatorily, applies to people who are self-employed. Is that the case?
Pardon on the last part of the question?
If I am self-employed, so this business owners, for example, and that they're not, if somebody is not under formal employment, can they pay for themselves NSSF and NHIF? Yeah.
Well, I started from the earlier part. If you do not remit, especially if you deduct and you do not remit, then that's a breach of contract with respect to the employee, and at the same time you have violated a government regulation. Remember, these remittances ought to be paid, I think, by the 9th of every month. So if you do not pay them, you are in breach. But what normally happens is that it is the employee who is going to initiate action. In other words, it's the employee who is going to take you to court for failing, because that is his money. If you are not been repeating, then you must give it back to him. If you were deducting and you do not remit, then he is entitled to recover that money from you, but that's usually a determination of the employment. But if he goes to hospital and is not treated because you have not been remitting, then that will become a very serious matter. You will have to find means to settle.
Okay. And there's a follow-up question from Joanita, who asks, casual workers who are working 3 times a week entitled to NHIF or NSSF?
No, those ones are normally given the wage. The government is under no obligation to pay them anything more than the agreed wage. Because as I've said, these ones are not covered by the Employment Act 207 directly, because for you to get the benefit of 207, you must have worked for a continuous period of when, or you must have be employed as permanent and pensionable, or for a period. If you are given a contract, they say 3 years or 6 years, then that means that you become entitled immediately, provided it's a fixed term contract. And remember again that even if you are being considered for permanent and pensionable employment, if you have not completed the probation period, then the only thing you are entitled to is the salary. So partial workers or periodic workers, those that work for 3 months, then they go away another 3 months, those will not be entitled to these statutory deductions.
All right. Now, let's switching gears a bit to registration. And there's a question about AGPO. Somebody is asking which type of businesses or company should have an AGPO certificate.
The types of companies that will have AGPO are youth, those that are run by youth, women, and persons with disabilities, because the certificate is basically meant to enable these so-called marginalized persons to get tenders with company. They can trade with the company because of their vulnerability. That's what, those are the ones that are required to have an AGPO certificate.
Okay. And if I'm an online, if my business is a simple one where I only sell clothes online, for example, do I need to register? Am I under obligations?
No, you are not under obligation. You can, in that case, you basically deal as a sole proprietor, okay, which does not require registration.
All right. Now switching gears to the other types of taxes, especially when you're talking about corporate gains tax. Grace, when you're talking about corporate gains tax,
Yes.
Grace was wondering if capital gains tax is also applicable to the sale of shares of a company.
Does it apply to?
The sale of shares of a company.
If a company sells its own shares or debentures, if a company sells its own shares or debentures, then it's not liable to this tax. It's not liable to pay this tax. There's an exemption.
Then there's a very critical one here, and it came from an anonymous attendee who asks, and this might be the plight of a number of business owners who have registered a company.
Yes.
Then they automatically become liable for certain statutory deductions. But then anonymous says, if I register a private company, but it remains idle or non-operational for 5 years, is there any risk to me? Am I required to, during that time, declare any obligations, taxes during that process? And if I have been charged during that time for not remitting, what should I do? So
thank you. The underlying concept of registering a company is to carry on business. It's not to become idle. You need to know at the very first instance that if you register a company and for 12 months you are not doing business, if you register a company and for 1 year you are not done business, the risk you run is that that company which is dormant will actually be deregistered. Okay, the deregistration does not necessarily to be communicated. What will happen is that a new person can apply for the same name. Okay, can apply to register the same name, and the registrar, upon confirming that you have not been doing business, then you lose the name. Secondly, if you had started trading and for some reason you are dormant, that basically means that you are not doing business. Okay, that the result is that you are not doing business, and you run the same risk. And unless you do business, you cannot be liable to pay taxes. Unless you do business, you cannot be liable to pay taxes. Okay. And similarly, the risk you run is that you lose the name. But if you had employed people, remember the first obligation, we've said the government has an obligation to protect the workers. So if you had employed workers, where do you take them? How do you deal with them? And you are dormant, and they have rights. They have rights in priority to even creditors. Employee salaries have priority even over creditors. Okay, they rank second after secure creditors. Then you have the employees. So if you render them redundant, you will still be liable to them. So you must then find a way of bringing their contracts to an end. Okay, and that usually is through liquidation. If you do not want to go the liquidation way, then you must pay them off. You must pay them off and declare them redundant. That's when you will escape liability.
Thank you. Thank you. That's quite comprehensive. There's a lot more questions from you guys. Some of them are follow-up. What we will do is we will then proceed to finish the presentation, and then we can come back to the question and answer.
But there is one I saw which I think I need to respond to about registration of SACCOs as a business. Okay, what one needs to do is to find interested persons, form a group. Okay, do a business plan. Okay, hold at the inaugural meeting, hold the first meeting. Prepare your constitution. Okay, and then prepare to register with SASRA as a SACCO, and we are good to go. And then somebody asked about EPZ, where he was asking whether EPZ is a pre-serve of foreigners. My response to that is that a company registered under EPZ can either be 100% foreign, 100% local, or a mixture of local and foreign. Thank you very much. We'll proceed. How much time do we have?
Now, among the documents that you need to register a business name registration is that you require your business name, that is whichever name you choose to trade with. The nature of the business, what kind of business do you want to carry out? Okay? Do you want to conduct fish selling? Do you want to sell goats? Do you want to trade in foodstuffs? Then land reference number, we need your fiscal address. Every business needs a land reference number. Remember that all the houses, all the plots in Nairobi, for example, and in major towns are registered. So you need to provide that. You need to provide your postal address for purposes of serving documents, town name, street name, and then the names of the proprietor, as per your registration documents, that is either your ID or passports, and then your nationality. This is with respect to business names. The questions that were asked are answered in this next slide. Obtain necessary requirements, the necessary statutory requirements. If you are foreign, then you must get a work permit. You must compulsory register with the Kenya Revenue Authority. the National Insurance Fund, National Hospital Insurance Fund, which is now SHIF. And once you register, and sort of course, together with the National Social Security Fund, the Revenue Authority issues a personal identification number that is used in filing returns and in conducting business transactions. So taxes, which include value-added tax, pay as you earn, must be paid. Now, the role of the National Social Security Fund is to provide employees with retirement benefits by acting as a public trust. So those contributions that are paid by employers form a pool, and when employers exit the working life, they can get retirement benefits, which in other organizations are called pension. SHAF, formerly National Health Insurance Fund, on the other hand, provides medical insurance cover to contributing members in government accredited hospitals. So it is an insurance of some sort, which gives the employees an opportunity, or gives persons, because even as employers, I'm sure you also need this cover. But of course, for employers, you are mostly able to, with your deeper pockets, you are able to provide yourselves with private medical insurance covers. Then you also need to register with the National Industrial Training Authority, NITA. Its mandate is to promote the highest standards in the quality and efficiency of industrial training in Kenya. This is a government organization which trains employees, especially those that work in private institutions, to get training. There is also a need for you to familiarize yourself with consumer protection laws. You need to align your business with certain consumer laws, depending on your industry of operation. Consumer protection in Kenya falls within the purview of the Competition Authority of Kenya. Remember, the Competition of Kenya, there is one concept in economics we call monopoly, where a company has, just like Safaricom, where a company appears to have a monopoly and it closes out other businesses. And the risk of this is that then it's able to fix any price on its goods and services as it likes. And this is why the Competition Authority of Kenya comes in to say that if you are a market leader, at least you shouldn't shove the other players of the market. It regulates the market, but I don't know, and I'm not sure why Safaricom still seems to have a monopoly in this country. Then we have the Constitution of Kenya, specifically provides for consumer rights. In Article 46 in particular, it says that consumer rights, that is, consumers are entitled to food and to goods and services of good quality, to the full information necessary to gain the full benefit from goods and services, to the protection of their health, safety, and economic interest. And this is where we also maybe need to say that it is important that we also become aware of the consumer protection laws as contained in the Consumer Protection Act 2012, okay, which elaborates these rights to a large extent. What this then calls upon employers and business persons is to ensure that in as far as their business operations are concerned, they become open, they become transparent, they become accountable. Now we have the concept of advertisement. Okay, advertisement. Advertisement is a way of luring persons to buy your products or to buy your services. Some of them are exaggerated, some are false. Yeah. And the Consumer Protection Act, together with the Constitution, then says that if a consumer is misled to buy goods, if he is lured into buying goods he could not otherwise have bought, but for the exaggeration, then is entitled to claim against the manufacturer or to you as the seller. He's entitled under law to return goods to you as a manufacturer or as a seller if he finds that they are not of the quality that he had intended to get, or if he finds them defective. If he finds them defective, or if he finds they are not fit for the purpose for which he wanted them. Employment and labor law in Kenya, we have already covered this to a bit of extent, and you say that the Employment and Labor Relations Court, if there is a dispute relating to labor matters, if there is an employment dispute, then the court with jurisdiction is the Employment and Labor Relations Court, and not the ordinary high courts. And crucial, you find that magistrates do not have jurisdiction in matters labor related. So you need to be aware of the minimum wage requirements, working hours and overtime arrangements, health and safety, then non-discrimination and fairness in hiring and termination. So when you hire, you must make sure that you are fair. You don't discriminate. The Constitution clearly forbids discrimination. You can't discriminate a person on their religion, on their color, on their sex, or on their sexual orientation. Okay, you must treat everyone fairly. And when it comes to termination, you must follow due process. You must follow due process. If it's a disciplinary matter, you must take the person through a fair administrative process. Okay, hold a proper disciplinary hearing, give this person a right of hearing, allow him to call witness if he has any, and ensure that he is not harassed in the process. Then Section 6, subsection 2 of the Employment Act provides that all organizations with more than 20 employees must have a sexual harassment policy. So it is a requirement that if you are employing, if you are employing persons, okay, or mixed sex orientation, you must make sure that you display in a conspicuous place in the office, okay, a policy that forbids sexual harassment, which warns persons against sexually harassing their colleagues or their employees. And sexual harassment is said to violate a person's constitutional right to dignity as provided by Article 28 of the Constitution of Kenya. It's defined as unwelcome sexual advances or behavior of a sexual nature by an employer or an employer's representative or even a co-worker. Even a co-worker, which contains either one, a promise of preferential treatment, a threat of detrimental treatment, or a threat about future prospects of an employee. So what must an employer do? Once he has deployed the policy, all employees are expected to be aware and to comply. But suppose there is a violation. Suppose there is a violation. Suppose there is a complaint of sexual harassment, either by the employer or by a co-worker. What must happen? There must be provided a procedure that must be followed in reporting the complaint. And the main requirement is that that complaint must be confidential. It must be a complaint that is confidential. It's not to be discussed as the investigation goes on. Some of the activities that workers complain of are so obtrusive, okay, are so distressing that many of them end up even quitting their job or suffering depression, okay, not wanting to come back. And it must be explicit, that is to say, it must be very clear to any person. Say, for example, where, and of course, we need to know that it can happen to either sex, it can happen to either a man or a woman, although the main complainants are women. Where, say, for example, it is reported that a worker brings a pack of condoms and puts it on the desk of a co-worker. Or he goes to the gents and leaves the door open. Okay, this can be very disturbing. And if a report is made and the employer does nothing, then there is trouble. Because then what will happen is that the employee who is the victim will go to court and then put the business in trouble. And therefore, in conclusion, we are saying that it's advisable that both existing and prospective business acquaint themselves well with the legal regime to avoid legal pitfalls that will inevitably lead to expensive and protected litigation. You can now go back to the questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ronald. I think we can now just jump into some of the questions, and feel free also to raise your hand. We can take maybe one or two as we address the questions. So I'll read one of the questions. It says, how does a trust come into play in managing a company?
A trust is an organization that is established by a trustee for the benefit of certain beneficiaries. There are various reasons for this. It could be that the person fears that after he exits the world of the living, if he leaves minor children, for example, and the minors are under law not able to hold property, then they may suffer once they come of age. So what happens is that then he will set up a trust to run his businesses on behalf of certain beneficiaries who are usually the widow or the widower and the children, especially if they are minor. So that a trust therefore becomes, as it is, it's not a human, it's a trust itself is not a human being who is able to think and take decisions. The trust is run by trustees. So these trustees run the business on behalf of the creator of the trust. And of course, it is entitled to a number of tax benefits.
All right, thank you. And then we have a question from Patrick who asks, what should I do when my employer underpays me or holds my wages for a long time, especially where labor unions are not available?
Now, employees' rights are independent of labor unions. Of course, trade unions play a very important representative role in assisting workers get their rights. But you'll find that in many private organizations, for example, private organizations like small private companies or small partnerships, usually there may be a tendency to either underpay or delay. Now, the most important question here is, for me, the underpayment. And this brings me to the person who asked, there are two questions that are in relation to the minimum wage. The minimum wage is based on regions. Nairobi is the highest because life is expensive. And then the other outlying areas have also their minimums. Now, in most cases, especially with elite employees, contracts are negotiated. Okay, it's based on a contract. And the contract is usually in writing. The contract must be in writing. If it's a term contract or if it is permanent and pensionable, at the time you are being interviewed, you will be told this is what we are offering. If you accept it, if you accept that as that it's okay, and remember these other contracts which are negotiated are not based on minimums. They are not regulated. They are left to the parties themselves to do what? To negotiate their terms. So if you accept a wage, say, of 30,000 shillings a month, that is on, especially on contract, term contracts, you cannot later on turn and say that I was underpaid. The person who will usually claim underpayment are these persons who are in informal employments, okay? So if that happens, of course, you cannot take your employer to court usually when you are in employment. You will wait for a reason. One of those reasons are when you are terminated or when you retire, okay? So probably because of, again, because of the, because again, like somebody asked that they might review, there's a circular that increased the minimum wage, okay, which was suspended later on. If you say, for example, ask these matatu owners, or you ask security companies to pay the minimum wage, then you have a problem. The problem you have is that they will not be able to pay. And if you tell them that if you can't pay, then exit the market, it means that there will be some ripple effects. That ripple effect will be that those who depended on, even if there are 2 or 3, the workers he employed will be without jobs. So don't you think that you'd rather have the bare minimum and keep this person in employment? Because even this businessman is doing what? He's suffering. He's struggling. He doesn't have the what? The money. He can only afford 10. And the government says the minimum should be 16. If you squeeze him, he will die. So what will normally happen is that after some time, maybe you are resigning or you are being terminated, then you file a suit in court. You file a suit in court to recover the amount you feel was underpaid. So it will be calculated for all the years that you claim that you were underpaid. Now, delay in salaries, one, first of all, may want to know, why is he delayed? Is it deliberate? Is he cheating me out of my, or is he suffering? But of course, if he delays, then he must give you a reason and he must give you a definite date because you have obligations. And it's also believed that the businessman can go to his bank and borrow. He has capacity, he has deep pockets. He can go borrow during the hard times so that he recover. In the future, the worker is in a weak position. That is the only source of income. He can't go to the bank and ask for a loan, especially when he has no salary. And if he had taken a loan from a SACCO or from the bank, he is in trouble if you do not. If you delay salary, then he will be made to pay penalties.
Thank you for that in-depth answer. So I think we'll have one more question from the comments, and then we can allow one or two of the participants. So Martha, I'll be calling on you to ask a question, as well as Ramadan. So Matthew asks, what are the legal requirements for registering a self-help group?
Self-help group is just like a circle, okay? But for that, you register with the, which board is that? But just as I said, in the case of a circle, you get members. You get persons who are interested, who have the same interests, okay? You prepare the list of those persons. Then you prepare minutes of the meeting that you had and resolve to register as a self-help group. Then you, depending on what you want to do you want to do business, or do you just want to be a group that assists one another? Depending on your purpose, then you will indicate it in your constitution, prepare a list of all those names, then go, there's an office, I can't remember, where you go to and you'll get a registration certificate as a self-help group.
We have CPA Philip saying that it would be the ministry in charge of social services.
Yes, you are correct. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that, Philip. So I can allow Martha. Martha, please go on and
Can I hear from you?
Martha, just a minute. We are okay. You can proceed, Martha, to unmute.
Hello to everyone. My question was just that how do you get your contributions after, at the end of, after you retire, when you want to claim those contributions, how do you get them from NSSF?
How you get the contributions from us? It's a simple process. Even if you retire, what you need to do is to go to the office, wherever it's located. There's an application form they'll have you fill. Once you have filled that application form, that is for your contribution, they'll give you a timeline within which you should expect the money in your account. It's a simple, straightforward process.
All right. Thank you, Martha. We can have Ramadan as well going in. Ramadan, please proceed to unmute. If Ramadan is not able to, we can ask Wambugu. You can have a go.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation.
Yes, Ramadan. Did you have a question?
Thank you for the presentation.
Ask.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ramadan. All right. Okay. I think we can take a few more questions. We have Dr. Jane Rose asking, what is the difference between a trust and a foundation?
I think it's a matter of semantics. It's a matter of semantics, although a foundation serves a wider coverage of people. It covers more people. And unlike a trust also, a foundation is one that is made almost for eternity. It does not have a fixed time. It's an organization that is formed for the benefit of a large number of people, and it's one that exists almost in perpetuity. Whereas a trust comes to an end when the beneficiaries take over, especially when children come of age and they take over, then it is the end of the trust. That is, if the purpose is served, the trust ends. The purpose of the foundation never ends. I think it will end when the world comes to an end. Like they say, for example, the Jomo Kenyatta Foundation exists for the benefit of children in perpetuity. Whereas you'll find that the trust normally is limited in the people that it's intended for. It is one that is based on trust. Okay, a foundation is just like a company where people just exist, okay, for a common purpose, but their relationship is not based on trust. They only manage a fund. Usually, they only manage a fund for the benefit of a fairly big group of people.
Right. Thank you. So we can have question from, there's an anonymous attendee who says the economy is quite harsh, but we're back to the minimum wage question, and getting to pay the bare minimum might not be practical. What happens in that scenario?
You are saying the economy is harsh and getting to pay the bare minimum might not be practical. So what happens? What happens is that you struggle to pay what you can, but you know that you run the risk that the persons that you are paying less than the bare minimum have a right to claim that amount from you at any given time. You are still liable for as long as you are conducting business. So you expect them someday they are coming to collect that is because they have the pay slips, they have evidence of payment, they know what the 2016 or 2017 was it minimum wage is, or the 12,120 that is existing today. If you pay them 10,000, in the future they are going to get their balance. But of course, one of the things that employees are expected to do, the persons that make these policies are the government or parliament. So you need to hold a stakeholders meeting with them and tell them, well, this is not practical. It will kill even us. So unless you are able to do that and you remain quiet, you need to expect that someone is going to claim their balance at some point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
So you are saying if you pay NSSF, do you need to pay severance? Severance is another benefit that employees are entitled to. NSSF is one, severance pay is another. Yes, severance pay is another, where the law provides that you must pay the employee, the exiting employee, 15 days basic pay for every year that he has worked.
Right. So we have a question around the amount of minimum wage. We have, I think we had mentioned it's 15,201. There was just a clarification that was sought around whether it is gross or net.
The amount is subject to the statutory deductions. It is subject to NSSF, SHIF to begin with, and if this person has taken advance, of course, is subject to it. So the 15 is gross. Net will be much less.
Great. Thank you for that. And then we have Lillian asking, can I create a for-profit company that also has a non-profit part, meaning that the non-profit part is connected to the for-profit part of the company?
When you create a company, you are required to provide the objectives. Okay, you are allowed to make the objectives clear, so that you may create, especially if you have the main trading company, which will be the mother company, can have a subsidiary which is non-profit, which is there for charitable purposes. Okay. So that is possible.
Yes, thank you. I think we can take one more from Adiambo, who asks, is a memorandum of understanding an acceptable legal document as a tool for formalizing working relations between two organizations?
It is a contract. It's a form of contract. Therefore, it's binding. You can describe it as a form of contract. It's binding. It can formalize your working relations with any other organization that you wish to associate with.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ojuku. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me also to say that next week we will be having a session on tax. And that's why, if you can see, we've preserved the tax questions. We shall be forwarding them to our tax consultants. And so you will have an in-depth session. That's why we didn't want to really dwell on the tax elements, but as you've seen, we've touched on the legal requirements that touch on taxes in today's presentation. So please watch out for next week's session that will cover the tax questions in depth. And we have also received your feedback around Q&As. As you've seen today, we thank Eli and also Mr. Ojuku, because we've gotten a bit more time to cover some of the questions. We have taken note of your questions and we'll continuously try and respond to them as much as possible. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As always, we are open to your feedback. And we will continuously try and improve the experience for you. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Look out for the email. Please note that the email comes from Zoom. It's an automatic email. So you can also check your junk folder, because a number of you might not receive it in your inbox. Check your junk folder. You will be able to see the emails that have the sessions and as well as the presentations. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mr. Ronald, for taking the time and breaking down the legal requirements in Kenya. Thank you, Eli, for conducting the session, especially the Q&A session. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for sitting through the session. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. And have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you.